Elliot deceived the black passenger, unaware that the man was the Minister of Transportation, ready to expose systemic racism. One ride destroyed Elliot's life and became the catalyst for changes no one could have foreseen. But let's start from the beginning. On a bustling New York street during rush hour, a cab driver named Elliot, a weary man in his 40s, hurriedly ushered passengers into his car. Years of experience had taught him to spot profitable clients quickly, and he unapologetically inflated fares for those he deemed vulnerable or unfamiliar with the city. A well-dressed elderly black man in a tailored suit raised his hand from the curb. Elliot stopped reluctantly, and the man climbed into the back seat. "Where to?" Elliot asked tersely, glancing in the rearview mirror. "The Ministry on Fifth Avenue," the man replied calmly, checking his phone. Elliot narrowed his eyes. Too fancy for an ordinary passenger, he thought. Perfect target. Instead of taking the direct route, Elliot took unnecessary detours, claiming heavy traffic on the main roads. The passenger appeared unfazed, gazing quietly out the window. At a red light, Elliot mumbled, "These guys always find a way to act more important than they are." The man gave a faint smile, but said nothing. When the cab finally pulled up to the towering Ministry of Transportation building, the meter displayed $75, more than double the standard fare. Without protest, the man handed over the money and exited the car slowly, walking toward the building entrance. Elliot smirked, stuffing the cash into his pocket. "Easy money," he muttered as he drove off, oblivious to the fact that this easy score would soon change his life forever. The next morning, Elliot sat with his morning coffee, lazily watching TV, when a familiar voice made him freeze. He glanced up, heart pounding. On the screen was the passenger from the previous day. Introduced as Harold Kingston, the newly appointed Minister of Transportation, he spoke with calm authority. Cold sweat beaded on Elliot's brow. Harold outlined plans to reform the transportation system, but then shifted his tone. "Yesterday, I experienced firsthand the injustice that many face daily. A cab driver exploited my appearance, deliberately overcharging me based on assumptions about my race and presumed unfamiliarity with the city. This incident is not just about me. It's about thousands of passengers who endure discrimination every day." Harold's words went viral almost instantly. Hashtags like #fairfares and #riding. While black trended across social media as people shared stories of unfair treatment and racial discrimination in public services. A video Harold had discreetly recorded during the ride, capturing Elliot's unnecessary detours and sarcastic remarks, spread like wildfire. Within hours, complaints flooded the taxi company where Elliot worked. His manager summoned him to an emergency meeting. "Do you even realize what you've done?" the manager barked, shoving a tablet toward Elliot. The screen displayed Harold's video, now with millions of views. Elliot stammered, trying to explain himself, but it was clear he was in serious trouble. The company issued a public apology and suspended him indefinitely. Meanwhile, Harold proposed a citywide initiative to regulate cab fares and mandate ethical training for drivers. His compelling speech received widespread applause and bolstered public support for systemic reform. Elliot began to understand that this wasn't just about him. It had become a national issue. Sitting in his cluttered apartment on the outskirts of New York, Elliot felt his life collapsing. Just days earlier, he had been a hard-working cab driver, toiling to make ends meet. Now, his face was on every TV screen and social media post, vilified as a symbol of systemic discrimination. The video of him overcharging Harold and making condescending remarks had racked up millions of views. Online comments were brutal. "A racist who got caught. This guy is everything wrong with the system. Serves him right." Elliot didn't know what to do. Every attempt to explain himself to neighbors or acquaintances was met with silence or outright hostility. Even friends he thought he could rely on stopped answering his calls. His phone constantly buzzed, but every message or voicemail deepened his guilt and fear. Afraid to leave his apartment, Elliot ventured out only when absolutely necessary, always with his head down. But staying home wasn't much better. His face had become too recognizable. Meanwhile, Harold's campaign gained momentum. He wasn't just a victim of discrimination. He became the voice of countless others who had suffered silently for years. "This isn't an isolated incident," Harold declared at a press conference. "This is a systemic problem. Every day, thousands experience discrimination, and many lack the platform to speak out. It's our responsibility to change that." Inspired by Harold's words, the city launched the Fair Transport Initiative, a program requiring mandatory training for drivers on fairness and cultural sensitivity. It also implemented a transparent complaint system with fines and suspensions for discriminatory behavior. Watching these changes unfold on TV, Elliot felt crushed. His actions had triggered sweeping reforms, but he had become their scapegoat. Unemployed, ostracized, and nearly out of money, he feared homelessness was inevitable. In desperation, he decided to write Harold a letter. Sitting at his kitchen table, he spent hours drafting and revising it until he finally settled on the following. "Dear Mr. Kingston, I deeply regret my actions and the harm I caused. I let my biases cloud my judgment and treated you unfairly. There is no excuse for what I did, but I sincerely wish to make amends. Please allow me the chance to prove that I can change." Days passed with no response, and Elliot's despair deepened. But then, a week later, an envelope arrived. Inside was an official invitation to a city forum on transportation discrimination, signed by Harold Kingston himself. Elliot reread the letter in disbelief. Not only was he invited, but he was listed as a participant. It was an opportunity to confront his mistakes publicly and perhaps start rebuilding his life. Elliot stood backstage at the forum, his palms sweating. The packed hall buzzed with energy. Journalists, activists, and transportation officials filled every seat. Harold Kingston stood at the podium, delivering a powerful address. "Discrimination in transportation isn't just about individual prejudice. It's a systemic failure affecting countless lives," Harold said firmly. "Today, we're not just here to discuss the problem. We're here to talk about solutions, and one of our participants has a story to share." Elliot's name echoed through the room. He felt every eye in the hall turn toward him. Taking a deep breath, he stepped onto the stage. Standing at the microphone, Elliot began. "I am the cab driver who made that mistake. I exploited someone and allowed my biases to dictate my actions. My behavior was inexcusable, and it hurt not only Mr. Kingston, but also countless others who have faced similar treatment. I'm not here to justify myself. I'm here to take responsibility." The room fell silent. People waited to hear what he would say next. Elliot continued, explaining how the incident had turned his life upside down, forcing him to confront his prejudices and reevaluate his values. "Apologies are only the first step," he said. "I want to do more. I want to help fix the system I contributed to breaking. That's why I'm here." Seated in the front row, Harold watched intently. When Elliot finished, the hall erupted in applause. Though some remained skeptical, others recognized his sincerity. After the event, Harold approached him backstage. "You've taken the first step," Harold said. "Now it's time to follow through." Elliot was invited to join the city's new program to train cab drivers on fairness and cultural awareness. Over the next few months, he became an active participant, sharing his story as a cautionary tale. Though his reputation was irreparably damaged, he found purpose in helping others learn from his mistakes. At a later event, Harold approached Elliot again. "You've changed," Harold said simply. Elliot shook Harold's hand, realizing that while his past could never be erased, his future would be defined by his efforts to make amends. His journey became a testament to how even the gravest mistakes can lead to meaningful change, with accountability and commitment.